Hi everybody, this is Mrs. Neller, and in this video I'm going to just refresh your memory on how to solve an equation by graphing using the steps in your graphing calculator. So you can see on the right hand side of the screen, those are your notes from section 1.5, day 1, and we're going to solve example 1 and example 2. So you can see the steps above. It says to solve an equation by graphing, we're going to write two new equations by setting y equal to each side of the original equation. So if we look at example 1, that negative 3x plus 2, we're going to set that equal to y in our graphing calculator. And then the 5, the right-hand side, we're going to set that equal to y in our graphing calculator. So on the left-hand side of the screen now, this is your graphing calculator, your Texas Instruments graphing calculator. So you're going to go to y equals, and we're just going to type in the left-hand side of that equation. So negative 3x plus 2. You can either hit enter or you can hit the down arrow. The down arrow is in the little circle. And then the other equation is going to be the right-hand side of our given equation. So let's type 5. You can hit enter or you can use the down arrow. Now, if you haven't graphed in a while, if this is the first time that you're graphing, instead of hitting the graph button, do zoom 6. That's your standard window, your 10 by 10 window. And the nice thing is on the newer versions of the graphing calculators, the two equations are colored. So you can see that our first equation is the negative 3x plus 2. That's the one that's in blue. And then the y equals 5, that's the equation that's in red. And they do cross at what looks like negative 1 something. So we're going to find that intersection. So to do that, you go to second trace, which is where we're going to get to our calculate menu. Okay. And then we're going to go down to option 5, which is our intersection. Now you can arrow down to 5 or you can just click on the 5. Now, this is usually where students have some issues because the calculator says first curve. What it means there is you can see the little cursor in the window, and if we move the cursor left and right, it moves up and down along the blue line, that first equation that we put into the calculator. So that's really what the calculator is asking you. Like, do you want this blue line to be the first equation? You can see it up above as well in the little window there. So just hit enter to tell the calculator yes. Then the little cursor jumps to the red line. And again, you can push or use the left and right arrows to move left and right back and forth on the red line. Doesn't really matter where that cursor is though. So hit enter again to tell the calculator yes. And then the calculator says guess. Now you can move the cursor a little bit closer to where you think the intersection is. You don't have to. Guess is just kind of like the calculator saying, are you sure you want me to find the answer for you? So just hit enter, and then down at the bottom, negative 1 and 5 is the intersection. So if we wrote that as an ordered pair, negative 1, 5, that's where they intersect. But in our example, we were solving for x. So really our answer for example number 1 is just x equals negative 1. Okay, so let's try those steps again. Let's do example 2 from your 5.1 day 1 notes. And these equations are just a little more complicated. So I'm going to go back to y equals and I'm going to hit clear and then the down arrow and then clear and hit the up arrow. That way I clear out the equations that I had in there. Now in example 2, again over on the right side of the screen here, you can see we've got the absolute value of x minus 4 is equal to 1/2 x plus 1. So to type in the absolute value, again, we're going to go to the y equals menu, and then you have to go to the math menu, arrow over to number, and then select option 1 where it says abs. And then we'll type in x minus 4, and arrow to the right, so that way you're on the outside of the absolute value bars now. And then hit enter. Because again, that was the only thing that was on the left-hand side of the equation. So now we're going to enter in the right-hand side of the equation for the next y equals in the calculator. Now you can use 1/2, you can use a fraction, or you could use a decimal. So I'm going to do 0.5x just because it's going to save a little bit of typing. And I know that the decimal for 1/2 is 0.5. and then plus 1. And again, you can hit enter or you can hit the down arrow. Now, since we already did Zoom 6 before, this time we can just hit graph. That should be our standard graphing window. And you can see that the blue equation was the one that we typed in first. So that's our absolute value equation. It looks like a V. The other equation in red, that's our slope-intercept form. And you can see that they intersect 2 times now. So we're going to find 2 intersections. So let's review those steps again. So we're going to go to second calc, which is the trace button. We're going to do option 5. And again, the calculator says first curve and second curve. Now, if you don't want the first equation to be your first curve, just hit the up or down arrow, and that will move the cursor back and forth between the red equation and the blue equation, or the red line and the blue line. Okay. The calculator calls them curves because this concept works when we have straight lines or where we have curvy ones like a parabola or a sine or cosine function. Okay. So it doesn't matter which equation you make the first curve. So I'm just going to leave the cursor on the blue equation and hit enter. It hops to the red line automatically and says second curve. So I'm going to hit enter. Now this time I want to guess, and since I have 2 intersections, I want to be close to that first spot where they intersect. So I'm going to move the cursor a little bit closer to there and then hit enter. There we go. 2, 2 is going to be that intersection. But again, to solve this equation, we were solving for x. So one of our answers is going to be x equals 2. But there's another location where these graphs are crossing. It's right on the edge of our screen there. So we're going to repeat this process and find that intersection so we can find the other solution to this equation. So again, second calc, option 5. Now we can arrow onto the blue line, and you can keep hitting the right arrow so that you go all the way over. You can get a little bit closer to that intersection and hit enter for your first curve. There, when it says second curve, the cursor automatically hops to the red line. So you can hit enter. And now when it says guess, you want to move that cursor a little bit closer to where you think the intersection is. It doesn't have to be exactly on top of it. It just needs to be a little bit closer. And then hit enter. And you can see that this intersection is at 10, 6. So it's right on the edge of our screen there. Okay, so we only see half the little cursor blinking. And again, we're solving for x, so the solution is going to be 10. Okay? So for this equation, there were actually 2 solutions. X equals 2 was our first solution, and x equals 10 was our second solution. So sometimes you can have 1 solution, or 2, or 3. You could have infinitely many. Okay? But you have seen me walk through this process 3 times now. Hopefully this was a good review of the steps that you need to use in your calculator. And as always, if you have questions, let me know.